were included in the original Bill of Rights written many years ago. Since the Bill of Rights, we currently have 27 U.S. amendments in the Constitution. Today, we're going to talk about how the First Amendment guaranteed the citizens against any type of infringement from the federal government or state government on their First Amendment freedoms of speech, press, religion, petition, and assembly. We'll start with freedom of religion in review. The Founding Fathers asked again, should we establish a national religion? At the time, the majority of colonists were Christian. However, leaders like Thomas Jefferson and other Founding Fathers believed that the government should not establish any type of national religion. The idea was establishing a wall of separation between church and state, which essentially means the government should not be involved with people's religious affiliations. The Establishment Clause was the idea, again, that the government should not establish a national, or should any state establish a state religion. For example, at the time, the state of Maryland was primarily a Catholic state. However, today, you will not find Catholic listed as Maryland's official religion. In no state will you find any official religion. Things that you can do under freedom of religion. You are allowed to teach about it in school. You are allowed voluntary prayer in school. You are allowed to transportate students to the religious school. And you are allowed to read the Bible for cultural activity. However, what you cannot do is teach like catechism in a public school. You cannot set a state religion. You cannot teach a religious doctrine in school. Or you cannot pay seminary teachers to teach in a school. And this whole debate about creationism and evolution is another controversial issue today. Again, another part of the First Amendment was the Freedom of Exercise Clause, meaning not running, not jumping, or not pole vaulting. It's the idea that you are freely allowed to practice your religion. Of course, there are some limits, because no freedom is absolute in this country. Freedom of speech is another hot topic even in today's society. You are allowed technically to say any political belief. You are allowed to protest without getting out of control. You are allowed to say things about someone that are not true. And then here are some other controversial things that have recently come up in the last 10 years. Believe it or not, you are allowed to burn the American flag in protest. Technically, you can say racist and hate slogans. Free speech also means you might say something that someone does not agree with. However, there are limits again. Certain things you cannot shell bomb on an airplane. You cannot threaten anyone. You cannot talk about bringing a weapon to school. As the Code of Behavior says, you can't harass, discriminate, sexually harass. You cannot do something that would create too much social chaos. Use extremely crude language in public, disrespectful, or commit any type of hate crimes. Freedom of press, the third component of the First Amendment. You are allowed to print any political position. Okay, there is no retaliation against that. Example, Nazi Germany, many columnists who spoke out against the National Socialist Party, which are the Nazis, were interned in concentration camps for their political beliefs. In our country, you are allowed to state any political belief you want. You can expose the wrongs of the government. You can make fun of people. That's where we get our tabloids, okay? And our politicians and celebrities. And you can also print things that others might not agree with. However, there are limits. Slander is when you say things about someone that are not true. You can be sued. Libel is printing something that is not true about someone. Technically, you are not allowed to disclose any type of defense or military secrets. And you cannot detail how to make certain weapons. Again, these are all controversial issues. Freedom of assembly goes along with the word itself. This past weekend or 2 weeks ago, we had the 50th anniversary of the March on Washington. Thousands of Americans came to our nation's capital to celebrate the legacy of Martin Luther King. That was a peaceful action of assembly. Okay? You can protest. As long as you get a permit, you can parade. Technically, even the Klan, which is still a controversial issue, and they are still around, has a right as long as they go through the process of getting a permit of having a parade. Gang members technically can congregate in public, but there are limits of that as well. However, then there are limits again, like with every amendment. You cannot protest with violence. You cannot hang on private land without permission. This is called loitering, and you've seen signs like that. If you are a teenager, which most of you are, you cannot violate teen curfew. The last right of the First Amendment is freedom of petition. And kind of like many of you have ever gone around or signed a petition, like I've seen before in a course in the cafeteria, kids always say, sign this petition to get new lunch food. That's the act of signing a petition, of protesting. You may petition and sue the government if you feel like you have been wronged. You cannot be punished for technically exposing wrongs by the government, and all these are supposed to have your day in courts. That is the right of freedom of petition. I hope you learned a lot today. Again, you have 5 fundamental freedoms of the First Amendment: speech, press, religion, assembly, petition. This was a short review. We'll talk about more about it in class. Thank you so much. Goodbye.